I have been playing this game my entire life, and there has not been a deck that I have played more over the years than Frog Monarchs. I have a variety of Frog Monarch builds, but today we are going to be taking a look at a deck profile for the pure Frog Monarchs. No heroes, nothing like that. We are just having frogs, monarchs, tribute summons, all that type of stuff for the Edison format, guys. We're going to jump straight into it. Here is my deck profile. I'm going to walk you through each card, okay? Starting off, 2 copies of Light and Darkness Dragon. I think this card is excellent in the Edison format, guys. It is very, very easy to get out, and something that you will see is I actually have a lot of cards where we end up using your opponent's monster for tribute summon. So all you need is the Treeborn Frog, you need a spell card, you can get this bad boy out. It is hell for your opponent to get rid of, and then when your opponent does get rid of it, you end up special summoning a monster. I have play tested this many times with 3 copies, 2 copies, 1 copy. I found 2 copies to be the sweet spot for it. I really like having this card in the deck. It is excellent in a Frog Monarch deck, guys. Let's continue on over here. 1 copy of Gorz, the Emissary of Darkness. Ideally, you would have 3 copies, but this card is limited over here. Of course, there are a lot of times where you find yourself with no cards on the field, even if you end up drawing it first turn. There are times where you can pass, you can get the swap frog on the field, you can bring it back to your hand. This allows for some defense once you have no cards left on your field, and because this deck doesn't run any trap cards, and I know you could want, it's escaping my memory. There's that one trap hole where you have no traps in your graveyard, and then you can destroy 2 cards on the field. I've play tested that over the years as well. Don't mind having it. It's not in this deck. You are never going to have a trap card in the field in this deck, and Gorz is always going to be available if somebody ends up launching a direct attack towards you guys. Next up, 3 copies, Caius the Shadow Monarch. I love this bad boy, guys. Of course, you can banish any card, and the amount of times that I've snuck game with this card in the main phase 2, or just banishing itself, is it happens more often than you would think, but it's always good, man. Of course, you are always going to be tribute summoning in this deck. You always have access to the Treeborn Frog. You will always have access to your opponent's monsters as well. This card, you can banish whatever you want on the field. If there's a problem, you get rid of it. Let's continue on. 3 copies of Rise of the Storm Monarch. I have always been a big fan of cards that return cards either from the hand or the field to the top of the opponent's deck. Something that I've also played over the years, especially when something like the Edison format, is Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. I think it's very underrated to stop your opponent, and in the modern game this doesn't matter nearly as much because you can get access to your entire deck in like a second, right? But if we're talking about something like the Edison format, draws make a difference, and if you can kind of stop your opponent from drawing their next card to get their next engine going or get their next strategy going, it's very helpful. So if you can somehow like end up getting 2 Rise of the Storm Monarchs in your hand, this thing can put a stop to your opponent pretty quickly if you start locking them down a little bit. So I am a big fan of Rise of the Storm Monarch. Out of all of the Monarchs, this one is my favorite Monarch. Of course, in the Edison format, I know there are more Monarchs, but you obviously can't use them, as we're talking about the Edison format today. Let's continue on. Dark Dust Spirit. I absolutely love this card. This thing, sometimes you can get into a point where you can just keep recycling this bad boy, man. Of course, when the card's normal summon or flip face up, you return it to the owner's hand, or excuse me, during the end phase, and when it's normal summon or flip face up, you destroy all their face up monsters. This thing can clutch boards. This thing, you can just keep summoning it over and over again if you'd like, and then attack for 2200 depending on what the field's like. I've play tested this a lot of times with 2 copies. I don't mind having 2 copies for it, but I found that it was just better to have at 1. If you draw it, great. It's not always the most useful card, but when it is useful, it is immensely useful, okay? I've always loved the Dark Dust Spirit, guys. Let's continue on over here to Spine Gilman. Kind of a useless card. We have Deep Sea Diva in the deck, and this is the target for it, so that's why it's here. Let's continue on. Of course, we have 3 copies of Swap Frog. You can special summon it. You can get it out. This is where you start milling your frogs. This is a very important card. You can get other frog cards from the deck to the graveyard to draw into your Monarch cards, or the obvious primary reason to have this card is to get Treeborn Frog in the graveyard as soon as possible. Swap Frog is a staple to the Frog Monarch deck. Let's continue on. 2 copies of Flip Flop Frog. Okay, I've always thought this card was a little underrated. I have also, over the years, and I have other deck builds where I also run Penguin Soldier along with like maybe 1 copy of Flip Flop Frog, because, and Penguin Soldier, very underrated card, by the way. There's been too many times where I found myself at a point where it's just like, you're kind of building up your field, maybe you're at a little bit of a standstill. First of all, in this format, to have something when you just flip face up and return a card to the hand, because no matter what, you're going to get to return 1 card to the hand, it's helpful. But there are a lot of times, surprisingly, that you'll find yourself returning maybe 2-3 cards back to the hand, having some frogs out on the field. This thing comes in clutch a lot more than you might think, and I know there's people out there that straight up don't like Flip Flop Frog. I've always been a fan of Flip Flop Frog myself. I've also liked Penguin Soldier, as I just mentioned, guys. Next up, Deep Sea Diva. This is the only card in the deck that allows for synchro summoning, and of course, the target will always be Spine Gilman. Then we're going to go for our Alea Justice synchro. That's typically the play, but you can explore more options as you have more monsters in the field. Let's continue on. 3 copies of Dupe Frog. Get those cards to the graveyard over a Swap Frog, and it's a 2000 defense monster if you just want to set it down. There's a lot of times, especially early game, when your opponent's going to attack into it, realize they can't destroy their Dupe Frog, and also the effect does come into play, but it's more so. I found Dupe Frog a lot more helpful in formats beyond Edison format, but I still like Dupe Frog at 3 copies as another frog. We get, and especially once you have Swap Frog, Substitute, you keep putting those cards back to the graveyard. You draw into your monsters really quick. It's just another frog to have in the deck, guys. 2 copies of Substitute. Again, getting your frogs over to the graveyard, getting your frogs to the field, milling, those types of things. We get the engine going with a good old Substitute over here. I like 2 Substitutes. And of course, we have 2 copies of Treeborn Frog. I always like 3 copies of Treeborn Frog, but in this format, Treeborn Frog is semi-limited. It gets a job done, man. It is the staple of the deck. This is what you need all the time. This is how you summon all of your Monarchs. This is how you summon your Light and Darkness Dragon. I love Treeborn Frog. It's one of my favorite cards. Again, this is probably the card that I have used most in my entire years playing this game. You need Treeborn Frog in this deck, guys. Let's go with 3 copies of Battle Fader as well. There are also a lot of times, like I said with Gorse, there's a lot of times where you find yourself with nothing on the field. This stops everything immediately. You need to protect your life points. Ends the battle phase immediately. Leaves you with a monster on your field. Now you can summon something for 2 tributes if you'd like to. Now you have an extra level for a synchro summon if you would like to. It's always good to just automatically have that and Treeborn Frog on your field no matter what. And I do run Creature Swap in this deck. Something that I oftentimes do is I'll summon Battle Fader in attack mode. Unless I have Treeborn Frog in the graveyard, then I'll summon that in attack mode and just Creature Swap it. So Battle Fader, 3 copies are a must in my opinion. Let's continue on over to the spells. Heavy Storm, self-explanatory, one of the staples of the format. And we run no spell and traps. We run nothing that you will set on this field. So Heavy Storm is very helpful. 2 copies of Creature Swap. I love Creature Swap. There was a point where I was playing 3 Creature Swaps. I find that personally to be a little bit too much, especially with the cards that we're going to get into. But you just put Treeborn Frog on your field. You put Battle Fader into attack mode. Even if you want to special summon a Swap Frog in attack mode. There's so many times where, because of your Monarchs, you're able to just reduce your opponent down to 1 monster. And then you just keep it. Especially if it's a boss monster. Especially if it's a synchro monster that your opponent worked really hard to get out of. Something like that. I really love Creature Swap. I always love cards that lets me play with my opponent's cards. It makes the game a little bit more fun, and it's very useful because there's a lot of times where you're taking some really good cards for yourself and just leaving your opponent with like a 100 attack Treeborn Frog. I love the fact that you give it to him in attack mode too. It's so great, man. 2 copies of Pot of Avarice. Now, this one, over the years, I have been going from 2 to 1, 2 to 1, 2 to 1 because I actually don't use Pot of Avarice that much, but sometimes you need that drawing power. I'm comfortable at 2. If you guys happen to be copying this deck and you want to use 1 Pot of Avarice, I've play tested that a million times over the years. 1 Pot of Avarice is good, but I would keep 1 in the deck. Sometimes you just get into that late game. Sometimes you want to recycle your Monarchs. Sometimes you want to recycle your Tribute Monsters, your Dark Dust Spirit, those types of things. And then you just end up drawing 2 cards. I would at least keep 1. I personally decided to keep 2 in this deck, but again, I also have various builds of Frog Monarchs, so for this one that we're showing you today, this one is at 2. At least keep 1 in your deck if you're going to copy this, okay? 1 copy Foolish Burial. Get that Treeborn Frog to the graveyard immediately. Easy peasy. And then we have a card that I've talked about a lot throughout the Edison format, Magical Mallet. Dude, I think that Magical Mallet is almost a must in a Frog Monarch deck. There are just those games where your hand's going to be Light and Darkness Dragon, Caius, Ryza, Mobius, whatever. It's just going to be a bunch of cards that you can't use. This thing, I think you need to keep. Sometimes it comes in clutch. Every once in a while, you'll have that brick of a hand with nothing but tribute monsters. That is really the only downside to this deck because that does happen. You get a little bit of reset with it. A lot of people don't like it because it's a -1. I think this thing it's a little bit of a game changer sometimes. Sometimes you need it. Even if you just want to shuffle 1 card back in the deck, man. Maybe it's a little too early to get a Pot of Avarice, let's say. I've always liked Magical Mallet a lot. Next up, 3 copies of Soul Exchange. I understand the problem with this one is that you can't conduct your battle phase, but it is so well worth it. The fact that you can just tribute your opponent's monster. I use this along with Creature Swap. I use Enemy Controller, another card that we're going to take a look at. I just like the fact that no matter what, I can just look at my opponent's monster and go, yeah, I'm going to tribute that. If there's a boss monster in the field, if there's any issue whatsoever with a monster, you can just tribute it. It's like, now everybody uses the Kaijus. Now everybody uses like Lava Golem. Some people use Volcanic Queen back in the day. It's just like that. It's one of the easiest ways to get rid of a monster that's relatively problematic. I love Soul Exchange. Always love Soul Exchange. 3 copies of Soul Exchange in this deck. 1 copy Brain Control. A little bit more of the same, but you can use this monster to attack. So a lot of times I would take my opponent's monster. If it's a really good monster, I'll use that for the attack to see if I can bait out any spells or traps, or they won't want to and they'll just eat it. Then in the main phase 2, I'll tribute, get a Ryza or a Kaius, banish something, return something to the top of the deck. Brain Control, very good card for this format as well. And then we have 3 copies of Enemy Controller. 3 copies of this are a must. You get the Treeborn Frog out, you activate this in standby phase, you chain it, using the Quick Play spell. You tribute your Treeborn, you take your opponent's monster, whether you want to use it for an attack, a Synchro Summon, a Tribute, doesn't matter, you automatically get your Treeborn Frog back. This is just taking your opponent's monster for 1 turn. And if you really want, you can switch the attack and defense of a monster too. Comes in handy for that sense as well, but you obviously use the second effect more often. Enemy Controller is an absolute must for this deck at 3 copies, guys. Now, that's it for the main deck. I know there's some of you that wanted to open up about side decks. I'd love to see. I'm always looking to make the channel the best it can be. We're not going to be talking about side decks today, but if this is something that you would like to see, then feel free to comment down below. I'll consider it moving forward. But this is the extra deck that we are working with over here. There's not a lot of times where you're going to go for a synchro. I just have a variety of options over here with the level 9s, with something that you would get is like a level 6. There's a lot of times where you have Deep Sea Diva and you take control of a level 4 monster with Enemy Controller, Brain Control, something like that. So you can get either Goyo Guardian, Bryanak, and Goyo Guardian is just in that format too, just the 1 tuner, 1 non-tuner monsters. But typically you're going to summon Deep Sea Diva, you're going to use Spine Gilman, you're going to get the Alley of Justice monster. If you want to use more monsters, these are just options right there, but typically you're just going to get your Alley of Justice card. Other than that, the options are there in case I use my opponent's monsters. I'm not going to typically use a bunch of my stuff over there. I know you can use Deep Sea Diva with a Monarch, and that opens the door for the level 8s, but I don't go into it a lot. Again, mostly just level 5 for this. It's not really a synchro deck, but those options are there, guys. If you want to talk a little bit more about some Edison Format deck profiles, why don't you check out my anti-meta deck profile over here? I have perfected that bad boy over the years, guys. You can check it out right there. I'd love to have you over there. Thank you so much for being here and for your time today. Take care, everybody.